everyone, and welcome back to Valina's Pages. Today we're talking about A Valediction of Weeping. This is another poem on the Edexcel A-level English literature curriculum, the John Donne series. So without much further ado, let's get straight into the summary. A Valediction on Weeping is a poem about two lovers parting, and it was likely written around the time when John Donne had to leave Anne Moore a lot for work. If you don't know, John Donne had a lot of different jobs. He was a seafarer, he was a voyager, he was an explorer, he was often away on business for other people, he was often the type of poet to write poems that were commissioned, so he would have to travel to somewhere else, and so he would frequently leave Anne Moore. And as we already know, he and Anne Moore had a lot of children, so she was actually pregnant most of the time that they knew each other, so he would have actually felt really guilty about leaving her, especially as she was pregnant with his child. And so he wrote a lot of these poems in an attempt to make her feel better and to say, like, don't worry, without me gone you won't particularly be upset, there's nothing to be upset about. And so this is one of those poems. And of course it's important not to overlook the fact that it can also be a persona of a lover who has to leave his other partner. At the time, travel wasn't easy, and neither were communications when you were away, so going away, you never really knew if you would come back or when you would come back. A valediction actually just means goodbye, farewell, so it's a farewell to weeping, the poem title. And the title farewell, it's at once a farewell, hopefully to goodbye, to crying and grieving, as the speaker hopes to comfort his lover, and it's also at the same time a goodbye, as in goodbye, I will be physically leaving you, and I hope that it's not forever, I hope that it's merely a farewell, as in I will see you soon, and meanwhile, farewell. Fare, be well. So I hope everything will be okay in my absence. In this poem, Donne turns around this traditional notion of lovers parting that was prominent at the time, this idea of this woman weeping as her man goes, or as her man goes for war and knighthood, this Petrarchan lover, all this kind of Arthurian legends and ideals of this knight who leaves and this woman who bids him farewell, all of those kinds of romantic ideas that were propagated at the time. Donne turns it around and he says, no, it shouldn't be like this. And we have the familiar three stanza structure, but while it is persuasive, it's far less aggressive than some of Donne's other poems. He's not really trying to tell her this is exactly how you should be, don't you dare be otherwise. It's more of a gentler, softer tone, as he's also trying at the same time to comfort her. The poem also has quite a lot of enjambments, which gives us that sense of heightened emotion, heightened tension and anticipation, and the irregular structure and note duration between the monosyllabic lines, as well as the pauses between 14 and the 14 to 15 syllables. It almost makes it seem like the poem is prolonged from the beginning to the end, like it's one long sigh, like it's one long journey, this idea that, like, oh, don't worry, I will be back particularly soon. And the rhyme of A, B, B, A, C, C, D, D, D also contributes to this familiar structure and makes it feel more like a gentle nudging, like a gentle rebuke not to feel any of the emotions that are expected. Alright, so with that, let's dive into the line-by-line analysis. Let me pour forth my tears before thy face, while I stay here. For thy face coins them, and thy stamp they bear. And by this mintage they are something worse, for thus they be pregnant of thee. Fruits of much grief they are, emblems of more. When a tear falls, that thou falls, which it bore. So thou and I are nothing then, when on a diverse shore. Allow me to bring forward, let me pour forth my tears before you. So before your face, they have value. This is an absolutely fascinating conceit, as he's basically saying that the tears flowing from his eyes turn into coins as they fall. They're precious emotion that he feels towards her, and as they fall, they're only precious because of her. It's her face which gives them mintage. So you know how on coins they have the head of the monarch, or at least in the UK they do. He's basically saying that she's like his queen, so without her face, the coins that fall, that his tears turn into, would be worth nothing. But because she's like his queen, the tears have her face on them, and so they're worth something. The emotion is only made precious when he's with her. His emotions are only truly valuable and genuine when he's with her. And it's a conceit that's genius on so many levels, because if you think about it, how else would her face be stamped on his tears? Well, it's actually because tears are water, so it's a reflection of her face. It's a reflection of like the fact that he's looking at her and that he has her face in his mind, he's looking at it, she's close to him. It's that scene right before they leave. Any other tears, they're just superficial water, but it's her face that mints them. So it's also that added meaning that the coins are only precious because they have her face on them. It doesn't really, all the money in the world is not as precious as her faces on his tears, on his coins. By this mintage, by you minting these coins, that's why they have value, because they're filled with you. Fruits of much grief they are, so they are the products of my sadness, they are the fruits of my grief, but they are also emblems of more. I think it's a wonderful pun of her name, because she's Anne Moore, but it's also emblems of more as in they're more valuable. They're emblems of something even more valuable than this, because they're of you. When a tear falls, you and I are nothing when on a diverse shore. So we're made more valuable by each other when we part. So we only have these tears when I cry because I can't see you. So even when you're not actually physically in front of me, I see your face. It's your face that makes my tears precious, but they're only precious when we're apart. So the poet is, in other words, asking her to give him this attention, to give him this opportunity to be away, because in fact, like, it's a double meaning, that there is only value when they're together, but also only value when they're apart, because the tears only come when they're apart, but they also wouldn't really be happy if they never came back together. So in other words, he's saying, like, by our parting, we learn to appreciate our time more, and these tears that fall from my face are more precious. We wouldn't appreciate our relationship as much. And contextually, I think it's also significant that at the time, Donne was struggling with financial issues. So this is really his way of saying, like, look, I'm going ahead to earn money and I'm doing this for the good of our family. So let's view this parting as simply something that's even better for our relationship rather than something we should be sad about. Round ball, a workman that has copies by, can lay in Europe, Africa, and in Asia, and quickly make that which was nothing all. So doth each tear, while thee does wear, a globe, ye world, by that impression grow, till thy tears mixed with mine do overflow. This world, by water sent from thee, my heaven dissolved so. On a round ball, in other words, on a globe, made by a globe maker, a workman that has copied Europe, Africa, and Asia, the continents, and has made something out of nothing. He has put together this idea of reality and of our perception of it, and Donne's time was a period of exploration. As British explorers and, well, other explorers, but in the UK predominantly British, set abroad, they set for sail to foreign lands, and they were confident that there was still so much more to discover, that although they knew the continents, there was much more to be known. So likewise, as these explorers set out to make a new world, to change our perception of reality as it is, we too make a world, make our new world by our own tears. Each tear is a globe. Each tear is a world that you yourself grow, and it's another reference to the microcosm and this idea that lovers can change their world, that they can create their own. And it's also perhaps a religious reference to Noah's Ark and to this idea that, like, there was a great flood, and so her tears are like this great flood that will wipe the world and make it anew. And it's also this idea that we, the two of us, are so great together that our tears can make something so powerful happen that maybe it's even, like, better that we're not together, that we can change this world for the better with being upset at our separation. So once again, it's another reason to not be upset that I'm leaving you. My tears and your tears will overflow the world. By your waters you could dissolve my heaven. We can destroy our own bliss by being so upset at our parting. We may even destroy the world. So please don't cry. Mixed could also be a reference not just to tears, but mixing in the sexual sense, that our two bodies mix together and we create our own world. And sometimes it's sad, but at all times it's beautiful and powerful and incredibly life-changing and transformative. And immediately after this image of a globe and this never-ending water, he follows it up with a stanza concerning the moon and the flowing of tides. O more than moon, draw not up seas to drown me in thy sphere. Weep me not dead in thine arms, but forbear to teach the sea what it may do too soon. Let not the wind example find to do me more harm than it purposes. Since thou and I sigh one another's breast, whoever sighs most is cruelest and hates the other's death. Oh, more than moon is another pun on the name more. You are to me more than the moon. I love you more than the moon. And you are all powerful. You're like this entity that draws up the tides, except the tides are your tears that come flowing because you're upset. So don't do it, because you will drown me in your sorrow. You will be the moon that while I travel abroad will cause the sea levels to rise, and because of that I may die. Weep me not dead while you hold me in your arms, but hold back, restrain yourself, don't cry so much. And it's also interesting as this could be interpreted as, don't hold me back, don't drown me with your sorrow because you're so upset at me leaving, let me go, let's not live in this claustrophobic surface, let's learn to stay apart from each other too. Forbear, hold back from teaching the sea what it may do soon. So in other words, by crying, by raising the sea level because you're like the moon, you're teaching the sea that it can also rise and drown me. So he's saying, please don't teach the sea, because if I'm traveling abroad, if I'm taking a ship, the sea may learn from your lessons, and because you cry, the sea may rise and I may actually physically drown. Let not the wind example find to do me more harm than it purposes. So don't help the wind blow me to my death because you're sighing so much. So he's comparing all of her sighing to this powerful wind that might just tip his ship into the sea, or it might just make him haste towards his death. In other words, like, stop thinking of the bad things that can happen. Stop being so upset that you are in fact what might cause these very bad things to happen. And whoever sighs more is cruelest because of this. Because we haste each other's death. And cruelest, this is a superlative. It emphasizes that the relationship can hurt, but not in the sense we expect. Not in the leaving, but in causing pain to our lover by us leaving. So the most painful thing is not to leave, but to watch the other person stay. And it's also this idea that because we have a limited number of sighs, because our lives are not so long, that by sighing unnecessarily, that by being upset over the small things when I'm sure I will come back soon, you are in fact tempting fate from stopping me to come back soon. So let's not waste our short life in being sad for each other, and let's instead appreciate our parting for the happy things that it may bring us. Resilience and happiness in the reunion is very much the message in this valediction. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much for making it until the end, and I will see you next week.